was brainwashed as a kid to love Baghdad and to love Iraq.
Back in the UK, we're foreigners.
Sometimes it's easier if you're a large Western company or even Middle Eastern company to launch in Iraq than for the locals to start their own businesses and grow them.
Welcome to another episode of Roots and Narratives with me, Rida Alwan.
Mina Al-Madani.
And today,
yeah.
we're still in Iraq.
We're still our final days.
Our final days. We're in Baghdad, obviously the capital, and it's been a fantastic trip so far.
It's been wonderful.
We've met so many inspirational people.
So much stories to share with you guys.
And so many visionaries. And today we are with a true visionary.
We
It's a complete different sector than what we've seen so far. And to be honest, I'm going to be totally transparent here. I didn't think that this existed in Iraq.
Did you know?
No. And when I heard of Mohamed, truly proud and privileged to say, you know what, Iraq is actually up there now. You know, we've got people that are in different industries creating wealth, money, and visionaries for the future.
For the future of Iraq. And we can see it's on the rise. Iraq is actually on the rise. And since we've been here on this trip, we've been observing a lot of these ventures, haven't we?
100%.
We've been talking to a lot of people, and so we've learned so much. But the growth that Iraq is going, and it's increasing year by year. I mean, from if you look at 5 years ago to today, the growth is so big, and it just gives you hope for the future. In the next 5 years, where can Iraq be? And we just hope for the best.
Absolutely.
So,
no further ado, today we have the phenomenal, the inspirational Mohamed Al-Hakim, the founder of EQIQ, a investment company. I think what we'll do is we'll pass it over to Mohamed to clarify even further.
Yeah.
Welcome.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Appreciate it. And thank you for the beautiful introduction. I don't know if I deserve it, but it's truly humbling. So just a little bit about what we do. We're a venture capital fund, but also a venture builder. So we invest in companies focusing on tech startups, but we also build companies. And we see Iraq itself as a startup nation, given that we've stopped and started so many times. But there's a lack of a pipeline or a private sector in Iraq today. So we don't only invest in companies, but we like a few sectors. And if we don't find good opportunities in those sectors, we decide to build those companies with, far more inspirational founders than myself. So we help founders build their companies and create an impact in the ecosystem and achieve their dreams.
Wonderful, and you've been doing that really well. Well done so far.
We're just starting, but
yeah,
we're happy with where we are today, and we look forward to doing more in the future.
So it's going to be an inspirational journey, but let's start right back from the beginning, because were you born here? And obviously we're talking English. Are you full-blood Iraqi? A lot of questions are going to be asked by our viewers. So let's start with that. Where were you born, and who are you?
Yeah. No, I was born in Baghdad.
Okay.
And I was born in 1988, so at the end of the Iraq-Iran war. And I lived here for 10 years. My first memory is from the Kuwait War, the Gulf War, the first Gulf War. And we left the country in 98, so I was 10 years old at that time, and moved around a little bit. My dad was a doctor. He was a retired general from the army, and he was also from the Hakeim family. So he had 3 separate levels of bans why he couldn't leave the country. So he left the country not in a legal way. And then we later on we joined him a couple of years later. Lived in Jordan for a while, and then moved to Sweden with the family. I stayed in Sweden for 10 years until 2008, and then I moved to London, and I stayed in London for 7 years. In between, I lived in the States. I came back to London, and then came back to Iraq in 2014, and I've been here since then.
So you moved to the States. Was this for studying or for work?
It was for work.
Yeah.
I was meant to stay there longer, but I
Mhm.
only stayed for just below a year,
Okay.
and came back to London to be closer to family.
Traveled quite a bit then.
Yeah, I've been around.
Yeah.
I've been around the block.
So your earlier life, where you said, so you started studying here then?
Primary
Yeah.
school.
I started primary school in Iraq until 4th grade.
How was that?
You know, the educational system, as far as I can remember it, and as far as I can remember what my brothers went through as well, because I have 2 older brothers than me.
Okay.
And one of them is 3 years older, and the other one is 8 years older. And the oldest brother was preparing for med school, and he left the country when he was just admitted to med school. The educational system was quite tough, disciplined, and you get graded from the 1st grade. And I would say it's not really about focusing on the students understanding what they're studying, but just learning what they're studying and learning it by heart. So if you have a good memory, you can do really well. And I have a pretty strong memory, so I did really well up until 4th grade. My brothers also did quite well. My oldest brother, he got into med school. He was the valedictorian of the entire country at high school. And I think it was, if the educational system was quite old school, but disciplined, difficult, if you wanted to get into the top universities doing the top subjects. But if you are disciplined and if you have a good memory, you could easily kind of achieve in the previous system.
Hmm. And so, how was the transition in between this education system in Iraq to the one in Sweden that you got later on?
Yeah, it was fast for me because I was 9.5, 10 years old when I moved. So I could learn the language pretty fast. I wasn't really struggling with the language. It's a pretty easy language to learn, especially if you just thrust yourself into the system, and if you're a kid and if you meet a lot of people and just make a lot of mistake. And within a 6-month period, I learned the language, and I joined at the same class that I left. So I joined the same year that I left in Iraq, joined 4th grade. And it was a very different learning culture and a very different teaching culture.
It's more relaxed.
It's more relaxed. The students have more power than they do in Iraq. The teachers are much less powerful than the teachers in Iraq. There's obviously no disciplinary measures like we had in Iraq. And it was a bit of a shock in the beginning, but you got used to it pretty quickly. And then in Iraq, we have a very much exam-based educational system. So if you do well in exams, then you do well overall. But in Sweden, it wasn't only exam-based. So it was based on behavior and how you do during class, etc. And focused on a few other things. We did a lot more subjects than we did in Iraq. And in Iraq, the focus was always on the sciences, but over there, it's a bit more mixed. You focus on both social science and natural sciences. And you also focus on things that we completely ignored in Iraq, like art,
Okay.
and PE, and music, and all of these things we would never even consider in the educational system in Iraq. But it was a nice addition, to be honest, in Sweden, because first of all, if you're talented in sports or in music, not necessarily talented in the academia, then you could find your talent much faster and much easier in the educational system in Sweden. It was more fun, and it was just a bit more collegiate, less serious than the educational system here.
And then that's after school, you moved to the UK for university.
Yeah,
What
I moved.
university did you go to?
I went to UCL in London, and I studied economics. So I did in Sweden. I was reading all the subjects in Swedish up until 9th grade, and then I switched to IB, which was International Baccalaureate.
Mm-hmm.
We started studying in English for the 3 years of high school, and so I was preparing to move outside the country already from first year of high school, and I was thinking about the US or the UK, and I ultimately chose the UK because it was closer to family, and it was also a country that kind of was a little bit of a mix between Sweden and the Middle East, if you may,
Yeah.
especially in
London.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
There's a lot more social in London, so there's a
Yeah.
lot more opportunities.
Yeah.
There's a community,
True.
you know. But the question is that when you left Iraq, you also had your brother. You just said he was studying. He was going to become a doctor.
Yeah.
So what happened to him? That's just the
he was the prodigy of the family.
Yeah.
Since a very young age, he was drilled into becoming a doctor, into becoming a surgeon. So he studied. I don't know if we can swear on this podcast or not,
Go for it.
but he studied his bum off, and he ultimately got into university here, and he got into University of Baghdad. So I was studying medicine, and then we left a couple of months later, got to Sweden. They, when you try to study anything in Sweden and you've done high school in Iraq, they will not acknowledge your studies. So he had to redo all of high school almost, and he got delayed by a couple of years, but he redid all the subjects, including math, physics, all the natural sciences that we take very seriously in Iraq. He did them again in Sweden, studied the language and everything, and did the exams, did well, and then he got into med school in Sweden again, and eventually became a doctor, and he's a doctor and a surgeon today.
And so there was no pressure on you to become a doctor?
There was always pressure on us, but I was the third child, so I was the most privileged and least watched child. And but our parents were kind of they always supported us in whatever we did. But I would say that the oldest brother took the edge off, and especially because he was 5 years older than my other brother, and then 8 years older than me. I think by the time I was born, my parents were a bit, they've had enough of kids, so they allowed me to be independent. But I remember my dad would always introduce us to his friends and family. My second brother is a pharmacist, so he would say, here's Ali, he's a doctor. Here's Maytham, he's a pharmacist. And here's Mohammed, he could have been a doctor, but he chose to be an economist instead. So there was no pressure, but there were small jabs here and there, under the belt.
Typical Iraqi dads.
But no, there was no pressure. I think I was privileged. I was independent from a very young age. I wasn't schooled by my parents. I would always school myself. I didn't necessarily need a lot of oversight or help with homework and so on. So my parents just allowed me to make my own choices when it came to academia.
And do you think you made the right one?
I don't know if you can ever make the right choices in academia, because I learned this in the UK that it doesn't really matter what you study. Eventually, unless you're studying something that is very technical, eventually if you want to do something, you end up doing it. And university didn't teach me much about economics per se that I couldn't learn online myself in a much shorter period of time and at a much lower cost. But it did teach me how to learn things fast. And it did also bring a lot of people into my life that I still keep in touch with, a beautiful network. And it was more of a degree in life than it was a degree in economics, to be honest. So I don't think the verdict is out if I made the right choice or not. I ultimately didn't choose to stay in academia or even do any higher education in economics, like master's or PhD. I don't see the benefit of that, but I'm not regretting the choice that I made.
That's good.
What was the cultural shock like leaving Iraq to go to Sweden?
It was a cultural shock, definitely for my parents and my brother, the oldest brother.
Mm.
I think for myself, I was a bit excited to go to a different
So
country.
you're quite young.
Yeah, I'm quite young, and I was also excited to see my dad again because we hadn't seen him for 2 years. He left the country in
Oh,
'96,
wow.
and then we joined him in '98. So I didn't feel the cultural shock as much. I felt it a little bit more when we went to class and I just saw the behavior of students in Sweden compared to Iraq and how much power I would say the students
Mm.
have versus what we have in Iraq. But I saw it through my parents' eyes. And my mom, for example, she used to be a professor at University of Basra. And so when she came to Sweden, she also redid a few subjects and ultimately started working as a teaching assistant. But she quit after a month because she couldn't take it. She couldn't handle it because of this dynamic of respect between students and teachers and professors, and the way she was used to how people would interact here
Mm.
versus how people interacted in the West, and especially in a Scandinavian country such as Sweden. My dad, he was a doctor in Iraq, and when he came to Sweden, he had to relearn everything and study things that he had studied decades ago. And that's a little bit of a cultural shock. And then you see it in some aspects that are not necessarily as important. Like, for example, driving.
Mhm.
So my dad had been driving for 35 years. When you drive in Baghdad, it's a different beast. And when he went to Sweden, he failed twice in the driving license exam.
Oh, no.
And that was a big shock for him. I mean, he took it very personally. But
Really?
yes, but those are the things that kind of make the cultural shock real. And then the differences between the two countries are huge. Like, people are very warm in Iraq, while in Sweden everyone is reserved. And at the same time, I think there are good things about our culture and good things about the culture in Europe and Scandinavia. And I think that I had the privilege of growing up in both countries and kind of have the perspective on both of them, and hopefully pick like the good stuff from here and the good stuff from there. But the weather also makes a lot of difference. I mean, the weather, I think, just influences how people interact and the culture, etc. But the biggest cultural shock, I think, look, I couldn't really make that distinction at the age of 9, but I think just how people live their lives, and I think that despite all the hardship and all the challenges and all the wars, etc., that people have gone through here, I still think that people somewhat live their lives in happier terms in a country like Iraq. A lot of it is due to the weather, but it's the warm culture and the fact that people, they enjoy themselves more. Maybe it is also rooted in the fact that maybe every day could be like your last day, at least in the past few decades, and so you enjoy the small moments a little bit more instead of just looking forward to the weekend or that vacation that you have during the year.
Yeah, that's so true. I mean,
Yeah.
we feel that all the time, don't
No, 100%. In Europe, we live like that. It's just our style,
we?
unfortunately.
It's more relaxed here. And like you said, the warmth from people, even the people that you don't know, the people on the streets,
Yeah.
just saying good morning to you, saying Allah Sada.
Mm.
It's just simple things. You just feel like, oh, thank you. I did need that. Whereas you'd walk past somebody back home,
You'd walk past
London.
hundreds of people.
and
Yeah.
you're not acknowledged at all.
And it's not only between strangers, it's also between family,
That's
because
good.
and even Iraqis that travel abroad and live abroad and become westernized, I think the connections between the families fade a little bit and you end up not seeing each other that often.
That's correct.
It's just like life takes its toll on you.
Yeah, it's true. We live a fast-paced life that we don't have time for anybody.
And this is the thing in the UK specifically, that you are taught to live on debt. So you're forever working to pay off your debt, to ensure that you're forever paying taxes.
Yeah.
And then you get into this loop where your car's on finance, your house is on finance, your credit cards are on finance, and you're forever in this conundrum of, I need to continue working, I need to, they have a social life here. In UK, we don't have time for a social life.
True.
You get drained. It's so cold. It's so turned around. I mean, it's not as cold as Sweden.
Yeah.
and the thing is, look at Sweden. Look at their statistics. The more north you go, there's a higher suicide rate because of the weather.
True.
So it's like, okay, the weather does have a big influence, and we're very fortunate in Iraq that we have. I mean, the summer's summer.
Yeah.
And the winter is. I mean, for us in Europe, it's still summer, but it's about that cultural shock. They have 2 weeks of winter here.
Yeah.
I mean, you've been here a lot longer than we have. And how cold is the winter?
It's not. I mean, like if Europeans experience the winter in Iraq, I mean, it could get cold because it's dry. The weather is dry, but it's still nothing compared to northern Sweden. But yeah, I think. I mean, it's not by design the fact that we don't have credit in a country like Iraq. It's just that the market is not there, and I think it will be there at some point, because this is a country that is very consumption heavy.
That's true.
And I think that if you would have credit, it might look just like the UK or Sweden or even Jordan. If you look westwards to Jordan, Jordan has a functioning credit market, and a lot of people are leveraged to their teeth. And
really,
yes, they buy cars on mortgages, they buy houses on mortgages, etc. They have a functional banking system, so everything is mortgaged. Everything is expensive as well, because when you have a credit system, then you bring a lot more people into the market that can buy the goods or the houses that couldn't otherwise buy these, and that brings prices up. And I think we'll probably head there as well, but we're not there because our financial services sector is not functioning.
Right. So if I take you back a little, so you're in the UK, you finish your degree, and a job opportunity comes and you go to the States, or was it just a choice of yours to go to the States and explore?
I was studying economics at UCL, and already from day one, when you study economics, all the financial services companies, they kind of attack you, and they want to pick talents from a very young age.
Okay.
And so
headhunted.
Yeah, you get headhunted, or you get indoctrinated into the system. So when I first started, I didn't know what financial services was or investment banking, but I went with the flow, and I saw that a lot of my peers were interested in this. So I did an internship in year one, and this was like a 1 week internship, just an introduction program. And I got a glimpse into it. And then again, in year two, you also get drawn into the hype. And I also did an internship between year 2 and year 3. And that was during the summer for 10 weeks. And at the end of that internship, I got an offer to go back to the same company that I interned with after I graduate. And when I graduated, I was offered to work both London or New York. So at some point I wanted to try New York, and I moved there for a few months. I was meant to stay there long term, but I ended up staying there for 9 months.
What happened?
I had too much fun. I think it's a very fun city, and I think it was too much.
I've never been to New York.
It was too much fun for a 23-year-old
By himself.
By himself, making a decent amount of money, and it was also too far from family. But I think I had too much fun too soon at a too young age. But I got it out of the system, and then I moved back to the quieter London.
You tell people you were homesick.
Exactly. That's a better narrative.
So you came back to London.
I came back to London.
Not Sweden. The family was still in Sweden, or
Family was still Sweden,
Okay.
but it's a short flight. So I came back to London. I was still working in finance, and I stayed there for 3 years at the company that I was working with. And then I switched jobs. I worked with another company, not in investment banking, but in private equity and real estate private equity. So we were investing in real estate, buying and selling shopping malls in Europe and the UK. And I did that for a year. And then I left in 2014 and I came back to Iraq.
By yourself.
By myself, yes.
what happened? Why Iraq?
So look,
what's the trigger?
we started coming back to the country visiting since 2008, and from 2012 onwards, the idea of coming back started to grow on me. I'm naturally a contrarian person, so I like adventures and I like to take risk. And 2012, the country was kind of shaping up again after a few years of conflict and hardship. And I started thinking of the idea of coming back to Iraq and building something.
Mm.
And by 2014, I couldn't think of anything else. It almost consumed me, this idea, and I didn't.
Really?
Yeah, I didn't enjoy life in London that much anymore. I had a great job. I was making a lot of money. I was 24, and I also had a lot of responsibility at work. I had a lot of trusts. I couldn't complain. I was very privileged, but I wasn't there. I wasn't there in spirit, and I was thinking of something else.
What was the trigger, do you think, if you had to pick one trigger for your trip, one of the 2012, 2013, or
Yeah.
2014, we were like, I need to move back?
It wasn't really a trigger. I don't think it's a one-off event. I think I was brainwashed as a kid to love Baghdad
Okay.
and to love Iraq. And there's a connection that I can't explain. It's sentimental. It's not really justifiable on a piece of paper. So you can't really put any kind of numbers or words or an event to it. And it just built up over time, although I left when I was quite young. But I think there was always something pulling me back. And to be fair, I love London as a city. I love New York as a city. I love Stockholm. I could see myself living in these cities, but there was something pulling me back to Baghdad. And I think I can only explain it by the fact that my dad brainwashed me when I was a kid to love the city. He loved the city. And there's something special about it when you're here.
That is magical.
100%.
You can't explain it. And it's not
Something in the air, I think.
Yeah, although there's a lot of dust in the air, but it's not a physically beautiful city.
No.
And
It's
it's becoming more beautiful.
Yeah.
The weather is not amazing, but there's something special about it, and I think you can only understand it, I think, if you've been brainwashed the way that I have been. Although a lot of foreigners that come to the country and Baghdad, they also feel that there's an atmosphere, there's a vibe. And so something pulled me back, and I think that there isn't any other city that I would want to live, at least right now. And again, I can't explain it. I spend most of my time in front of the laptop screen all days a week, but it's just being in Baghdad makes life more special for me.
Do you have an internal peace being here now?
I think so. I think that it's something that makes me content or happy. And it doesn't make me feel like I need to go somewhere else. And I think it's important that you are at a place that you don't want to escape from. Or if you're coming back, if you're a diaspora, you're not seeing it as a project for a limited period of time. Because if you're going to be at a place, you have to invest, you have to plant your roots. And I think that it's important that you feel somewhat at peace, that you feel like this is a home, that it's a place where you can build something, and it's a place where you can see yourself for the future.
You said home.
Yeah, it is a home. I think I've lived in many places, and by the way, I've always felt like a foreigner when I move from one place to another. Moving to Sweden in '98, I was probably the darkest person in class, and stuck out like a sore thumb. There are a lot more immigrants in Sweden now, so it's not as uncommon. When I London was obviously more diverse,
Of course.
but coming back to Iraq was also not very smooth, because people treat you, at least back in 2014, they treat you as a foreigner if you're an Iraqi, and they know that you've grown up outside. And I think that probably it was the time of my life, or the move where I felt the most as a foreigner. And
Coming back to Iraq.
coming back to Iraq, yes.
Wow.
In terms of how people treated me.
Okay.
Obviously, my Arabic wasn't great. My Arabic was broken. I had to relearn Arabic, but it still is broken. But when I came back to the country, you could tell from my accent that I had been living abroad, or people thought that I was not Iraqi. So that's something that people would always point out. If you're engaged in a discussion with people about something, they would always point out that, well, you didn't grow up in the country, so you don't know how it is, or your perspective is not valid because you were not here through the years.
What we experienced, I
Yeah,
guess.
which is fair, because people went through a lot of hardship.
Yeah.
But on the other hand, I did, feel like a stranger when I came back. So you had to kind of build things back up again, and find your place. The move back is not always super easy, although I think I'm a very easygoing person who moves back, if that makes sense. Like I didn't have any big commitments in London, so I could easily move back to the country.
Okay, and so, well,
No, I was going to say that's something that quite a lot of the diaspora struggle with.
Yeah.
All of us, back in the UK, we're foreigners to certain people. And we feel it. We've heard the comments.
Yeah.
And when we came back here from 2003, 4, 5, whatever year it was, into من الخارج, you're foreigners again.
Yes.
And so quite a lot of the diaspora were like, we're foreigners here, we're foreigners there, so where is our homeland?
Yes.
So there was that whole identity, I wouldn't call it crisis, but it was just, we didn't really have an identity.
Yeah.
And that's, one of the reasons why this podcast exists, because we lived vicariously through our parents' Iraq, right? Our kids, we can't give that to them.
Our parents, I guess, would always speak about Iraq, think about Iraq, complain about everything in the West, because they saw it from an Iraqi perspective.
And they were always going back. They always had that bag in their mind.
Exactly. They always had it in the back of their mind. I think now they at least my mom is not able to she wouldn't be able to come back to the country, because she got used to life in Sweden. And I'm first generation as well, so I lived in both Iraq and all a little bit everywhere in Europe and in the US. My brother's kids are second generation, and I think they're they have less and less ties to the country, and I think it usually takes maybe 3 generations for people to feel like they're truly from that country. Right? So us as first generation immigrants, or even maybe second generation, because you would still hear Arabic at home, you still feel some kind of connection. But the third generation would probably be detached, and they would feel like British citizens through and through. So I think it takes a couple of generations. But yeah, I definitely acknowledge, like I felt the same when I came back, because I think for me it was a little bit about feeling as a foreigner in every single city or country that you go to, and then coming back here and you still feel like a foreigner. it makes you doubt the whole idea about countries and borders and nationalism. If you're logical, but then if you're sentimental, you still have an attachment to the country, and that's why I think I was brainwashed when I was a kid.
And so, at any time, were you thinking, "Oh, I need to get out of here. I don't belong in Iraq"?
No, I think I have a pretty thick skin, so if people, laugh at my accent or they tell me that I'm a foreigner or that I can't really have an opinion, that doesn't really affect me that much. And that's because I've done this a couple of times. When I moved to Sweden, and I was really shy in the beginning when I moved to Sweden, and I didn't speak for a few months. I think for like 4 or 6 months I didn't speak because I was shy and too proud to make a mistake in the new language. And then I moved to London. Although I studied all my subjects at high school in English, I thought that I was a fluent English speaker. And I moved to London, and I only interacted with people that had grown up in London, and I didn't understand anything because they spoke English really fast, and in London, kind of colloquial terms and slang. And so for 2 months, I was still a mute, and I didn't have the courage to speak. And then I came back to Iraq, and I was like, I'm not gonna do this again. I'm not gonna be silent, and I'm not gonna be shy. So I just, I went for it, and I would make a lot of mistakes, make a fool out of myself, and people would laugh or bully me. But that's, because it happened previously, I thought it was fun. So for me, it didn't really affect me that much, but I can, I can see how it might affect other people. So I didn't think at any point that, well, it's really tough. I'm gonna go back. And I also, when I came back, I had a very specific mission or purpose, which was to build something. And this is what I came back for. And I could have built something in Europe, or I could have built something in Iraq, but I think you can have much more impact in a country like Iraq. So I didn't come for people to kind of cuddle me and tell me, wow, it's great, let's clap for you because you came back to the country. I came for a specific purpose, and I think throughout the years, I always thought that I could still live and achieve that purpose, and I think that's important.
So you came back to Iraq. You didn't have a job waiting for you. You came back to start something.
Came back to start a business.
That was very brave. Did you have any support from your family, friends?
No, I just quit my job in London, and I came back. But I was always a risk taker. I started my first company when I was 15, and I started another one when I was 17. I started a third one when I was 19. So I had done it before. I had earned money, saved a lot of money. I had sold a business and lost all the money. And for me, this kind
That's
of
part of business.
Taking risks and going up and down wasn't much of a challenge or an issue.
But what about the legal stuff, the procedures?
Yeah.
There's
in Iraq,
so much different to how
True.
things are done in Europe to how things are done in Iraq. And so how did you adjust to learn all of these things?
Well, I think I'm also privileged in that I have a big family in Iraq.
Okay.
Extended family, so cousins and uncles and aunts, and they're always ready to support.
Okay.
But other than that, I think you just need to start somewhere. So I think I had to renew my documents, for example, when I came back to Iraq, and I dedicated a week to get all the documents renewed, and I did it myself because I wanted to interact with everyone. I didn't get any help. I didn't get any lawyers, and I just went there. And as soon as they heard my broken Arabic, they would see a dollar sign, for example, and expect me to kind of pay them to do
their job,
just normal stuff. But I was adamant about not paying anyone and do it the hard way. And I think that you have to get things done yourself you have to be on the streets, you have to be involved in society, you have to learn the code, and you have to make mistakes and not be afraid of really interacting with people. And for me, I think that was the formula of just um, feeling like I could do something here, not being shielded, not just staying indoors, not just being in an office early on, and that's it. No, going down to the streets, uh, going to this any public institution to get some paperwork done. And paperwork is one of the worst nightmares in Iraq. But getting that done early on and understanding how the system works, it's really important. And again, if what's the worst thing that can happen?
That's true.
At the end of the day, you just have a bad day, but you learn from it.
It's lessons learned. And in Iraq, there's quite a lot of lessons that you learn very quickly.
100%, yeah.
I think you have to be thrown in the deep end to learn these lessons as well.
I remember coming here one of the trips, and it's just like renewing your visa, because obviously we didn't have documents at the time. And it was go to that window, then you go down to that floor, then you go up to that floor, and I'm like, oh my God, why can't you just have windows that are just beside each other and just stamp? And it was just like, operationally, that's how I think, procedures set up. And I'm like, no. It's like, you've got it. I was like, okay, let's just go with the flow. Let's see where it goes, and then electricity turns off. It's like everyone goes out for a cigarette and having a cup of tea.
Yeah, there's, the bureaucracy in the country is obviously really bad, and it affects the quality of life of everyone that lives here. But it's reflective of where the country's at. So if you want to get a glimpse of how life could be sometimes in Iraq, go renew your documents.
Was the intention initially EQIQ? Was that the goal? You were coming here to do this?
No, the intention when I came back was to be in real estate.
Okay.
Because that's what I did in London before I came back to the country. And it was to build something that was visible. And I discovered this later on in life, but my passion is really building things.
Okay.
And I either worked in real estate or I worked with startups. So I either built buildings or built companies. And so the intention when I first came back
was the building side.
Was the building side. But it was one of the worst times to come back, because I came back in 2014 and ISIS had just swept through a third of the country, and real estate was really going down and plummeting.
Best time to buy if you had money.
It was the best time to buy a couple of years after I came back, because it just kept going down up until 2016, and then it turned up again. So, and I had the backing of a few investors when I came back, but I advised them against investing in real estate at that time because the prices were just going down. So I set up a company that invested in real estate and in the stock market in Iraq. And I
Iraq
did that.
has a stock market?
Iraq has a stock market, yeah.
Okay.
It's very small, but it is a stock market. And then I started a fintech company, and we built one of the first digital wallets in the country at that time. And we sold that company, me and my co-founder later on. And then I started a bank. This was in 2017. I stayed at the bank for a year, also exited it personally. And then
You sold that one as well, or?
My share in
Okay.
the bank, but the bank remained. And then I worked with Hakeim, helped start Hakeim in Iraq. For a few years, I was with Hakeim up until 2021. I took over Jordan as well, so I was managing both Iraq and Jordan up until September 21, and then I left, and then I set up EQIQ. But the purpose was to build something, whether it was something tangible, physical, or something that could affect people's lives, even if it wasn't physical, even if it wasn't tangible. That was always the purpose. And that's why I started a series of companies and ultimately set up EQIQ, which invests in people that are building companies.
What was the biggest lesson learned in the first 3 years?
I think that I tried to accelerate a lot of things, and sometimes you can be too early
Okay.
doing things, and you can't force it. And I think that I was a bit naive in doing things a specific way and not really adapting enough. And thirdly, I think that you have to really understand your own weaknesses and the country that you're coming to, or the place that you're coming to, and kind of model yourself after the country that you're coming to. So I made a lot of mistakes. I tried to accelerate a lot of things, but I was also privileged in having these learning experiences, because early on in my journey in Iraq, I made a few wrong decisions. I lost all my savings. I was broke, and then I could recover it after a few months. And I think that just looking back, that experience was really useful because it just removed the fear of failure from me. Not that failure isn't painful, but it's not the end of the world. So I think I was very naive when I came back. I was also only 25, 24, 25. And in hindsight, I should have done things in a more structured way, but I still wouldn't have changed anything.
Okay.
It's all part of the experience, part of your growth as an individual, I think. That's why you're saying you wouldn't change anything, because every hurdle, every stone that you've turned, it's been an experience and it's been a learning curve for you, to a point where now you've started this company. And so what is your vision for this company?
So our vision is to build or help build the ecosystem of founders and startups. And I think that ultimately on a high level, change doesn't come from the top down, it comes from the bottom up.
Interesting.
And
Is that Iraq only, or is it just?
I think everywhere, but specifically for Iraq, because we can sit and talk about a lot of things that are happening at a governmental level and at policy level, and expect a better government or better policies for change to happen. But I don't think change will happen from the top down, it will happen from the bottom up. And our vision is to be part of this change, even if at a small scale, and to plant the seed and grow the seed through a snowball effect. So if we support one founder to build a great company, that founder will also inspire other founders within that company, and they will go out and they will build their own companies, and then they will also inspire another generation of founders, and that's how you have this snowball effect. We've seen it with a lot of companies outside of Iraq as well. For example, there's a term people use to refer to the team that built PayPal, and they call them the PayPal Mafia. There's also, and they use it with Kareem as well, and they call the people that built Kareem the Kareem Mafia, because they went out and they built a lot of successful companies in Saudi, in Egypt, etc. And I think we need to do the same in Iraq. So we're not necessarily building something that is transformational from day one, but it builds and plants seeds that could build transformational companies and inspire people to go out and build their own companies.
So give us an example of a company that would come to you for a startup. What kind of company would you help? Or what kind of company would you help?
Yeah, so we focus on tech sector only.
Only tech sector?
Only tech sector, or tech-enabled businesses.
Okay.
But we work with founders to help them build their companies. It could be anywhere in e-commerce or logistics or payments or other sectors in the tech sector. And tech today is really the infrastructure that you can scale fast from. And also in a country like Iraq, which has a virgin economy and there isn't really anything there. We are lacking so many basic services that if you start to build something today, you don't necessarily need to build it the way that people did 50 years ago, 100 years ago. You can start from scratch, but you can leapfrog a lot of the steps that people in other markets went through.
Yeah.
So it's a blessing and a curse at the same time. It's a curse that we don't have so many services, but it's a blessing that you can learn from other countries' experiences and you can start from where they are today.
Yeah.
And that's why I think we are a startup nation. We can really build this nation from scratch. But yeah, we would help founders build their companies, and we help them with funding, we help them with mentorship, we help them with advice, and in general, just plugging the gap that they have in trying to build their businesses. And it's not easy to build a business from scratch, especially in a challenging environment like Iraq. And building it on a shoestring budget, but we try to make that process easier, identifying the exceptional founders that would be able to do something like this.
So if I come to you today with a business plan, so you will take my business plan into consideration, or there is some limits to what you can actually help or who you can actually help?
Yeah, we get a lot of proposals, but we don't support everyone.
Okay.
And I would say we probably support between 1 to 5% of the people that seek funding or support from us. And again, we're not a charitable organization.
No, of course.
And I think that building transformational companies in an economy is essentially a capitalistic exercise. It's not a charitable exercise.
No.
So, and even then, startups that we support or any other investor support have a 90% chance of failure. And there's only a 10% chance of success. So our job is not to support everyone, but what we see our job is to create a success story or two. And that's what I think the country needs. The country needs role models, examples, success stories, inspirational stories that people can look at and say, you know, if these guys did it, so can we. And they start dreaming a lot more. They take a lot more risks, and a lot will fail, but some will succeed, and they will create opportunities even for the ones that fail, but for everyone else as well.
And how easy is it? Say I have a successful business running in the UK, and I want to start up something here, something similar to what I have in the UK.
Yeah.
How realistic is it to actually come to Baghdad and start a business that has been established somewhere else?
You can. I mean, a lot of companies have done it. And if you look at the private sector in Iraq, it's dominated by companies that are foreign companies, whether it's in the oil sector or in the banking sector, even in the technology sector. We just talked about Hakeim, and we also have other companies like Talabat, which was started in Kuwait originally. Hakeim is a company that is owned by Uber, which is an American company at the end of the day. So sometimes it's easier if you're a large Western company or even Middle Eastern company to launch in Iraq than for the locals to start their own businesses and grow them.
But isn't that taken away from the locals then?
It does, but that's the brutality of a free market, and that's the way that things happened in India as well.
Yeah.
And if you compare India to China, for example, China protected its economy and its market from foreign entrants, and India kept it open. I bet you can name a lot of successful Chinese tech companies, but you can't name many successful Indian tech companies. We all use TikTok, for example. We've heard of WeChat and so on, but we don't really use any Indian tech companies, right? And Iraq is a free market, and the transition from a centrally planned economy, from a socialist economy to a free market didn't really fully happen.
Yeah.
It's a mix between this centrally planned social economy and a free market economy. And sometimes it's a free market economy for the foreigners and a centrally planned economy for the locals.
I
Yeah.
was going to say, you've got to look at Obar, I'm going to try and pronounce it correctly so that it doesn't conflict, and Belly. These are, yes, maybe have foreign investors,
Yeah.
but they are Iraqi-based companies, unless I'm mistaken.
Yes and no. So OBR, I think, was launched by an Iraqi Danish gentleman who came back to the country. Again, I think he is an example to look at, and I think OBR has done well for themselves. So, well done to them. Belly is not necessarily an Iraqi company. It was started by Rocket Internet, which is a German venture fund, and it is a venture fund that has many investments in the region in the ride-hailing space. They have the largest ride-hailing company in Iran called Snap, and they have another one in Jordan called Jinni, and it's also operational in Saudi. So Belly was originally started by Rocket Internet and had many international investors. So it is partly local, but not fully local.
Okay.
And they had the benefit of, being launched by someone like Rocket, and they could bring all of their knowledge, all of their expertise, the technology, and also the investment from abroad, which the locals don't have from day one. If you're a local founder, you don't have that from day one.
That privileges that you get with foreigners and foreign companies. Would our viewers know any of the companies that you'd invested in?
Maybe we have 5 investments so far.
Okay.
We have built 3 of them, or are helping founders build 3 of them, and then invested in 2 other companies that were already in place and had been built by exceptional founders. So if you've heard of Fetchy, which is a dropshipping B2B2C e-commerce app that we built, and Boxy, which is a logistics aggregator that we also helped build together with 2 exceptional founders. And we are currently in the process of helping another exceptional founder build a digital bank in Iraq called Instabank. And we invested in 2 companies, one called Whale, which is a payment and e-commerce aggregator, started by Ali Ismail, who is also an exceptional founder. And we also invested in an edtech company called Corsi, started by an Iraqi guy who was living in Finland and had a startup in the educational space in Finland, came back to the country to really import the Finnish educational phenomena to Iraq, and we invested in his startup Corsi.
I love Iraqi company names. Fetchy.
Not kursi as in chair.
La Corsi, which is it's a play on course, my course.
Oh.
And I think that's Finnish for course, maybe. I don't know. I don't speak Finnish, but
Okay.
yeah.
It's like you have tomato, and it's like the most random names.
They keep it simple.
Yeah.
They certainly do. Would you recommend people, especially the locals and people like us who are the diaspora, to come back and start thinking, what can I do to serve? What can I do to come back? Or what can I do for the locals to start a new business? Because I see there's a lot of, from the locals, slightly different, of negative vibes. They're very cautious, I think I'll use that as the word for now. Yeah. And then for the expats, for us diaspora, we are afraid because we don't know the laws and the systems.
Yeah. Well, I would recommend it if it's aligned with your purpose and what you want to do in life. And I don't suggest that you should force it, because it's gruesome to build something, whether you're in London or in Iraq. And so if it's not aligned with your purpose, when the going gets tough, it's easy to give up.
Okay.
And I would only really recommend someone to do it if they're 100% sure that this is my mission in life. Because it's exciting in the beginning, but then when that excitement dies off and the dust settles, then you need a lot of grit, and you don't know how long you need that for. You might need to grind it out for years. So if you don't have that passion, if you don't have that purpose, it's difficult to get up in the morning, and you might give up. And at the same time, if you fail, that's not the end of the world. And usually we see failure as a plus. If we meet a founder that has a failure or a failed business previously, that's a plus, because it means that they've tried something before, they've learned the lesson, and they can at least skip a few mistakes that they've done in the past. So if you're okay with that, then maybe you should give it a go. And the freedom to fail is one of the core principles of a free market economy at the end of the day. So try it out. It's not going to kill you. It's really tough to fail. It's not going to kill you. As a foreigner, or if you're part of the diaspora, I think sometimes you can get this FOMO mindset and try to make decisions really fast. I know this because I did this myself. So I would suggest try to find a platform to come back to. And you don't necessarily need to start from the toughest level of building a business as soon as you come back. If you find a platform that can help you move back to the country and ease into it, that's probably the best approach. And we're trying to build one of these platforms, whether at EQIQ or one of the startups that we are building. And it's easier to re-engage with Iraqi society through one of those platforms. And at the end of the day, if you're part of the diaspora and you join one of these platforms and you test it out, you can always assess, evaluate if this is something for you, and then you can go back. I don't know if I see it as a moral duty to serve, really. I think you should only do it if you believe it, and if it's aligned with your mission and with your purpose. And only if it's aligned with your mission and purpose will you make an impact. Because you can have a mindset of, I want to serve, and you come to the country, and then you give up from the first challenge that you face, and you didn't really serve anyone. And you definitely did not serve yourself. And for locals, again, I would have the same advice, because it's gruesome to build something from scratch, and it takes a lot of sacrifice. And if you're ready to sacrifice that, because again, it's aligned with your purpose, it's aligned with your mission, then you should give it a go. But if not, if you're doing it for the wrong reason, because it's cool, or because it's hip, or because you think it's going to make you rich, or because it's better experience than working at a company, think again, because the odds are not in your favor. And I'm not saying that to discourage people from doing it, but I'm just saying it because it's the reality. And I see the founders that we have supported, and they work day and night, and they make a lot of sacrifices. And some of these sacrifices are financial, some of them are family related, some of them are health related. But they make these sacrifices, and they're still happy about it, because it is aligned with their mission and purpose in life.
Oh, thank you for that, first and foremost, because I'm sure a lot of people would want to know. So let's move a bit away from work and give you a bit of a break from work. And
Sure.
So how do you spend your time in Iraq? Like, what do you do apart from work again? I know how busy
that's
you
the
are.
sacrifice. That's the sacrifice stuff.
That's going to be the shortest part of the podcast. He must be coming to the end of the. No, so I again I am privileged again because I spend a lot of my time with exceptional people, and work and social life have kind of merged together.
Okay.
It's difficult to say where one starts and the other one ends, and so it tends to be very connected, and at the same time as ultimately I think, when you grow up, the fun that you have in life is with people that you meet, and people are the ones that are gonna stimulate your mindset, and you have fun if you're spending it with the right people, regardless where you are. And again, I'm privileged working with a lot of exceptional people, and that's why work feels like fun and I don't need to escape it. But I do have some activities that help me have fun. For example, I also started a restaurant together with a couple of friends,
Oh, nice.
and it's an Italian restaurant in Baghdad. And that's one of the things that I
Do you want to give us the name?
enjoy. It's called Grano, and it's very close to where I live and work. So I try to spend a lot of time there. I don't always succeed, but yeah, just the idea of a place that brings people together is interesting and fun, and that makes me happy about what we're doing. If I'm not working, again, a lot of these events that go on in the country, incidentally, we have like 3 or 4 events that are happening
That's right.
this weekend,
That's correct.
and I spend some time there. But to be honest, a lot of time goes to work because, again, it takes a lot of time and effort to build something.
But work is fun for you.
For me, it's fun, and I think that building something is fun. And I think that I'm lucky having been able to figure it out and know what my passion is in life, which is building something. And if you take me away from it, I'll probably just think about it still, even if physically you remove me away from it. But it is fun, and it's fun to see something grow and have an impact on people and affect people's lives in a positive way or change people's mindset. And that for me is fun. And I haven't traveled much since I moved back to the country. I would always tell people that I'm the least traveled Iraqi in the country. And again, that's a not by design, but it just happened this way. And I think, again, if you're at a place where you feel happy, you don't necessarily feel that you have to leave that place. You don't have to escape from it. And I know exploring other countries is not necessarily escaping the one that you're in, but time just goes by without you necessarily thinking that you need to plan that trip, and so on. Even though when I was living in London, for example, or Europe, I would travel a lot. And the last year that I was living in London, I spent 50% of my time in Spain and 50% in London. I would travel around quite a bit. I was also a very traveled final year student at university because I already had a job. I had sold the business, so I was a well-off student, and I traveled quite a lot at my 3rd year in university.
So now it's just
Head down
and do my work.
A little bit, yeah. I think,
But
and
enjoy
it
your
goes,
social life with your potential partners or company organizers.
Yeah, and I think it goes in waves as well,
Yeah.
especially when you're building something. So it's very intense for a few years, and then maybe it starts to steady. And if the organization grows, and it's inevitable, either it fails and you go back to nothing, or it grows and you have to evolve, and you have a lot more people that help you build that organization. And so we're still in the beginning. I always think that we're always in the beginning.
Mm.
And so it takes a lot of grit and a lot of time to build something and to get it standing on solid grounds.
So probably my final question to you would be, have you traveled within Iraq? Have you traveled around Iraq? Is there companies that you would start up in other cities in Iraq, other provinces, or you just stick into Baghdad?
Right now, we are only in Baghdad physically, but we serve all of Iraq because Iraq is not that elongated of a country that we cannot serve it from Baghdad. But I would say I traveled to a lot of Iraqi cities throughout. So I've been almost in all provinces in the country since I came back. And one of the proudest moments, I think, was when we launched Kareem in Mosul. This was in 2019. And Mosul had just been liberated from ISIS in 2017. So 2 years afterwards, we launched Kareem in Mosul. The eastern bank was still in rubble. It was completely destroyed, but the western part was fine. And when we launched it there, it was, for me, it was a very proud moment because the city had gone through so much hardship. And in the first few weeks, it was the most successful launch that we had. And I spent a lot of time in Mosul. We would go up to Mosul, spend a few days there. And we just saw people being happy because a company like Kareem chose to launch in Mosul. We also launched it in Basra and in Erbil and in Najaf. So we did that with Kareem, for example. And I think there's a lot of opportunity in many different cities in Iraq, and the country is extremely diverse. And that's one of the strengths and the challenges at the same time. Basra is very different than Baghdad, which is very different than Mosul, which is very different than the Kurdistan region. And this kind of hodgepodge of different ethnicities and different cultures is what makes this country so challenging, but also so exciting at the same time.
I've got two last questions.
Go on then.
One is from the podcast and one is from me. My one, if Mohamed Al-Hakim 2014 came knocking on your door today, what advice would you give him?
I would say, to be a little bit more patient and not...
In today's market?
In today's market? Yeah, I would say, again, to be a little bit more patient because Mohamed Al-Hakim of 2014 already had the FOMO really high. And so in today's market, which is much more exciting than 2014, that would be almost double or triple the kind of sense of urgency. But I would perhaps, push myself to be a bit more patient and not necessarily to be as it's not only impatient, but just wanting to accelerate everything. Things do take time, and you can't force them sometimes. And I think that's part of the advice that I would give myself. But at the same time, I would, again, not change anything that I did 2014 and onwards. And I think that energy that I brought in 2014, bringing it to this time in Iraq, would make much more impact than it did in 2014. But you can never guess when is the right timing. It can be too early, it can be too late, but I think that the future is bright for this country.
Wow, good answer.
And your second question?
So we have this segment in the podcast where
we've reached that point.
where the previous guests ask the next guest a question, and you ask the next guest a question.
Okay.
So our previous guest asked,
what have you done for Iraq or in Iraq that you're truly proud of?
Who was the previous guest? Can I ask?
You don't need to know.
Oh.
No,
Can I
that's
guess?
a surprise. No,
That's-
no, it's a surprise.
Okay, what have I done for the country that I'm really proud of? Well, I think we have helped build a few Iraqi companies that I think will be transformational for the country, and that have changed a few people's mindsets, both locally and in the region about Iraq, maybe even in a few European countries and maybe even in the US. So changing perception both in Iraq and outside Iraq. And I wouldn't say this is on a macro level, but on a micro level. I think that makes me proud because, first of all, I think there's a huge perception issue inside Iraq and outside of Iraq. And for example, if you talk to a lot of Iraqis, they often prefer foreign products to Iraqi products, foreign companies to Iraqi companies, and even foreign human beings to Iraqi human beings. And there's this kind of complex that I would really like to break by building Iraqi businesses that prove that this complex is misplaced or it's wrong.
Yeah.
Very true.
And likewise, there's a perception issue outside the country because if you think about it, we do have somewhat of a functioning democracy in the country. We've had 6 peaceful transitions of power since the fall of the previous regime until today. It hasn't been pretty, hasn't been smooth, but it's always been peaceful. But ask anyone outside the country, what are the democracies in the Middle East? And Iraq would never be mentioned. We have a terrible image outside the country. We have a PR issue, we have a lobbying issue, and no one is really working on it. So if we can contribute to changing someone's mind about Iraq, that this is not a country where there's a lot of conflict anymore, and the narrative changes from conflict to development to opportunity, that is something that I'm proud of. And I know that we've changed the mindset of a few people, not everyone. Again, I think
Of course.
the change that we want to do is on a micro level, and then it can be multiplied from one person to another, as opposed to try to do it on a macro level. And I think that's the powerful change that is long term as well.
Absolutely.
What would you ask our next guest?
Can I ask who the next guest is?
No.
It's a surprise.
I'm trying to remember if you told me who the next guest is.
I don't think we did.
Maybe ask him a
I-
personal
I-
question.
I might have slipped earlier, but
I would say, I would maybe ask the next guest to tell us about the biggest challenge that they think someone would face in Iraq as a local today, trying to achieve their dreams, and how that challenge is not necessarily impossible to overcome. So maybe share some advice about how sometimes we perceive challenges being insurmountable, but it's really just our own fears that are building up these challenges.
that's a good
Good one.
question. That's a very good question.
I don't know if it is. You put me on the spot, so I have to come up with something.
Well, it's something to think about, actually.
No, absolutely. I mean, to all our viewers, and first of all to Mohamed yourself, thank you so much for joining us. Truly inspirational. Obviously, this is just the beginning, as like you said, bigger and greater things, inshallah, to come. Like I said, I was very privileged to have met you. I heard you speak in Taqat a couple of years ago, so that was the first time I've heard of you, and I was like, wow, they're doing stuff in Iraq. Things are moving, things are changing. There were some figures and numbers that were thrown about during that period. I was like, okay, Iraq's doing well, you know. And I think quite a lot of people that attended that event had a lot of FOMO.
Mm.
You know, people were like, okay, I need to get there, I need to get there.
Yeah.
And it was just like, okay, take a deep breath. Let's see what's going on.
Yeah.
Let's find out. Let's see what the lessons that we've learned. Who's learned lessons? Are people willing to share? Not willing to share? And you've been very open, and it's been lovely having you on.
Yes, it's been lovely. It's very, very informative. We've learned quite a lot, so I'm sure our audience will as well. So,
Thank you so much.
No,
thank
you're
you.
very welcome.
Thank you for your time.
Much.
Actually, you
Appreciate
did take out some time. This is Friday, right?
This is Friday weekend.
It's your weekend, and you actually gave us your time. So we thank you very much.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate it. And yeah, thank you for highlighting stories of people inside the country and outside the country. And I think you guys are also going to help change the narrative both inside and outside the country. So keep it up.
Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate that. To all our viewers, for us to have fantastic guests, like we said at the beginning, please like, share, and subscribe. Leave us comments, leave us questions. We're happy to pass anything on to Mohamed, and he will get back in contact if he can. He's a very busy man. His team will be in contact. So keep following, keep listening, and honestly, one of the best countries in the world.
I concur. Thank you.
Thank
Till
you.
next time.
Bye bye.